Thank you so much for hosting us tonight. It's not just me here with you, it's everybody at Crossroads. So these opportunities are so welcome because there's so much that's misunderstood or perhaps not understood enough about domestic violence, let alone the fact that it's a topic that can be heavy and it can be somewhat there can be a lot of inhibitors to sharing broadly the dialogue that we need to have about domestic violence and intimate partner abuse. Again, my name is Pam Jones, and I'm the Executive Director at Crossroads Safehouse. Tonight, having learned more about your series from my wonderful host, Pam Johnson, it's been wonderful, but I learned a little bit more about your series. To have something like this is a way to share knowledge in a different way. You not only hear from me, you see slides, you talk at your tables, you talk after I'm gone. You learn that way. You commit many things to longer term memory when you have those multifaceted ways that you're touched by something. Again, we're so appreciative because to start the conversation and to keep the conversation going is an imperative to making sure that not only do we help people that are suffering from domestic violence, but we also prevent it. So a brief overview of our time together this evening. I'm going to provide the basics around domestic violence so that we can learn from that standpoint. And then I'll share with you a little bit more about what Crossroads does and how we fulfill our mission. And then we'll talk about the community of Fort Collins in Marin County related to that, give you a little bit of an outlook on the future at Crossroads and how that affects our community, and also share how First Presbyterian can help. And then we'll open it up for questions. So my first slide, nicely done. I am going to refer to my slides here, so I'll be looking down a little bit, and that's all right. Anyway, what is domestic violence? Domestic violence is a pattern of behaviors where one gains power and control over an intimate partner. Most cases of domestic violence are never reported. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It affects every single one of us. Statistically, the numbers are quite high, unfortunately. So domestic violence is power and control. There's many different types of abuse, and they can run the gamut. Most often, there's a combination of several factors. There's verbal abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, technological abuse, which is becoming quite a pervasive matter in our modern day world, stalking, financial abuse, physical and spiritual. So if you think about these various ways in which someone can have an inordinate amount of power and control over another human being, these are they, but they're multifaceted and they are complex. Domestic violence, those who report, it takes them 7 to 10 times to leave an intimate partner for good if they do it all. Reason being is it's in the context of intimacy. And intimacy means that you share and hope for a great relationship together, and that you want it to be love and you want it to be caring. If you look at the next slide, this one outlines the cycle of abuse. The way that relationships work is that they cycle, and they can cycle in many different ways, but when there's abuse present, typically there's tension that builds, and then the abuser gains control in some way, and that can be those types of abuse. It could be something physical, it can be emotional, it can be financial, but then after the incidents of abuse, they're really apologetic, charming. very engaging, and they try to reestablish the appearance of stability. Typically, they're making up conditional apologies, and then there's this relative calm until the cycle occurs again. This is what makes it very complex. And if you have children, family, that can make it even more complex because you have a lot at stake to protect children. Sometimes one of the greatest deterrents we see at Crossroads is the threat of homelessness. Our victims will come to us and they will have no identification, even though they have been a citizen of Fort Collins. They are present in our community, but yet no identification is something that's so commonplace for so many. They will also not have established any credit. So to think about alternatives, we have perhaps small children, to going back to an abuser or finding a way forward on your own is really complex. Has anybody seen the series May at all? May is a series that I believe it came out in 2020, maybe 2019. And it is a great way to impart the difficulties people face when they think about trying to leave. I won't spoil the story. I will recommend you see it though. I have to admit, I could not watch it. I tried watching half of it the first time, and I thought, oh, I don't think I can do this. Nope, not all day, not all evening. It was difficult because they did a great job of sharing what it is to be in a condition where you have very few options, and then you have a small child too, and you may not have the family structure that you need, or perhaps friends that you can rely on for extended periods, because it's going to take a little while, typically, to make a change. But I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. So the cycle of abuse is something that makes leaving difficult. And as well, sometimes gaslighting will happen in these instances where the abuse has typically been going on for quite some time, whereby the victim will think, or the person that's affected may think, oh yes, well, I deserve this. This is my lot in life. I will carry on this way. He or she, they are right. I'm the one who's wrong, and this sort of thing. Those are particularly difficult cases because that's something, there's a lot more complexity to bringing yourself out of that situation. So what about Crossroads? Crossroads' mission is to shelter, support, advocate for, and empower all people so that we can live free of domestic violence and interpersonal abuse. Our vision is a community free of domestic violence and interpersonal abuse. Lofty goals are they, however, we think we could do it. So, Crossroads was founded in 1980 by a group of concerned citizens, people that were highly engaged in the community. In that day of time, there was a confluence of things happening. One, there was a lot of legislation in the late 70s that was coming to pass to protect battered women, which is the term that was used back then. Fort Collins, some pioneers started talking to the city, and with the city bought a 4-bedroom home in Old Town. That 4-bedroom home was built the day that it was opened. And so flash forward in 2010, 2009, Columbine Health Systems gave us the current building that we are in. We're almost a neighbor. We're on Parker Street, which runs parallel of Prospect to just south of Prospect, east of College. We are a known but not advertised location. Some shelters, you have got to give explicit directions on how to find them. Our building's 29,000 square feet and it's split into 4 separate neighborhoods. And there are 31 rooms. So many people in Fort Collins, if you lived here a while, or maybe even not too long, they know us as a shelter, they know Crossroads, who we are as a shelter. But last year we served 3,557 individuals. And we did that across all of our programs. So Crossroads is the physical building, that tangible thing that you know, okay, I know that that's Crossroads. You can tell by the security gates outside. I use 7 different locks to get to my office. So the place is secure as far as we can, control it, if you will, because we want it to be very secure. But anyway, that we're located on Parker Street, and we have multiple programs. But before I go into that, it doesn't. Well, let's talk about COVID-19 for a change. So COVID-19 was very, very difficult, as you can imagine, for our clients. Typically, they were safe at home orders in proximity to their perpetrators. And what it did alongside many of the effects of COVID, such as economic difficulties, some joblessness, mental health issues, there's a lot we have to unpack there that we have not quite yet. And many other extenuating circumstances. It was hard. It was very difficult. Our crisis calls went up in the first year compared to 2019, 42%, where we saw 6 lethality cases each year. We were seeing that number every week. That means that our victims had faced a life-threatening circumstance. If an abuser attempts to strangle a victim, they're 20 times more likely to be killed by them. So we were seeing really tough cases. Our victims were not coming to us. Our shelter numbers actually peaked right at the beginning of the pandemic, and then there was this quiet lull. And it had to do with how we were managing the virus and doing what we could. Excuse me. Our DART calls, we have DART, which is domestic abuse response team. They go out at the site of an incident with law enforcement. So when law enforcement is there, they are there to stabilize the situation and then move on. But what do you do when you have perhaps a mom and a child in your squad car? What next? They're not there for a longer term. They're there to diffuse and to stabilize and to assess and then to move on. Well, our DART calls went up significantly. They almost doubled. Since then, though, what we currently see is an average of 30% increase in crisis calls. They're still there. Our lethality cases have gone down to 2 to 3 a week still. And our crisis calls have stayed high, but like an average of 30%. So the virus, the pandemic, hard-coded some conditions and things that are prevailing. We're concerned about these trends, but we're also glad that they're going down. That is a good thing. Meanwhile, we just started unmasking at the shelter. We have been taking that page out of the book of the congregate settings, particularly healthcare, to take care of our folks. We have lower vaccination rates with our clients. So we just started unmasking, but then we mask, of course, when we have somebody that we're with who is masking. We had maybe 10 to 11 cases in our clients the entire pandemic. We think that our COVID protocols helped although, you know, the science has to catch up with all that, and there's a lot of analysis to do about what factors really play, but we do think that two people masking at a distance seems to help. So that worked out well for us. So previously I said, you know, we're not maybe just the shelter that you see. I want to share with you, thanks Dave, a little bit about our programs. Oh, they're out there, very good. Our programs are pretty broad, but if you think about a victim of domestic violence on their journey from being abused to perhaps actually being rehoused and having a new day and from which to actually have a more stable condition. It's called wraparound services. Perhaps you've heard that term, but every bit of our programs together do that for victims. So I think the best way to describe our programs is perhaps to do it from the lens of a victim. I'm a mom, I have a 3-year-old. I flee at 3 a.m. and I call the police. And I'm at the 7-Eleven down the street. Police come. Their advocacy team calls our advocacy team, and our JAR team comes and assesses the situation. And then I am intaked to Crossroads. All I was able to grab was my backpack and my child. I have nothing else with me. So when I arrive, all my basic needs are taken care of. I'm given shelter in one of our neighborhoods. I can go to the commissary that the food bank will assist us with, where I can grab some food and prepare food in the kitchen in one of the neighborhoods. I can be with my child and help with whatever they need as well. I can also receive medical care. Volunteer doctors come in and they serve our clients from our med unit. There's a boutique where they can get clothing of any size for both children and adults. So I can meet my basic needs, and then I meet with my advocate for case management and support. We work with a self-sufficiency model whereby we try to help our clients with their resources and to identify them and to know more about them so that they can bootstrap their way into this way forward. We help them obtain an ID if they do not have one. Our housing specialist may talk with me at that time and say, what are you doing for housing? And then refer me to our Road to Home program, which is a transitional and rehousing program. So we will help people get into apartments or homes and ensure that their rent is paid on a sliding scale for an entire year after being with us. While I'm at Crossroads, I may need to go to the courts to get a protection order, and we have a legal advocacy team that will do court accompaniments and help me in the court system if I need to actually place an order with that, for that protection order. You can work with our Bringing Justice Home law attorneys that we have in-house. We have 2.5 attorneys in-house that help with legal matters and legal representation. And then once I leave Crossroads, the physical building, and perhaps I'm in a new apartment, I can receive outreach support and advocacy from our outreach team, our non-residential team, so that perhaps I can just keep on working on this matter, that we're perhaps attaining employment is not a luxury that I can't afford because I'm too busy working on survival. So that gives you a good idea of what our programs are. We also have 6 bilingual staff and who speak Spanish, and an additional bilingual staff person who speaks Arabic and French. So we will help people who are monolingual or need assistance in their own native language, particularly Spanish. And then we wouldn't be doing our part unless we did work in outreach and prevention. We have a program, it's called Time to Talk. We go into the high schools and we teach about healthy relationships and teen dating violence prevention. We teach students, high school students, well, not we, actually. We teach juniors and seniors to teach freshmen and sophomores about what it is to choose a healthy relationship in high school. The CDC says that at age 13, as early as age 13, women, particularly girls, will be affected by abuse of some sort in their lifetimes. So we reach back into the junior highs, and now we're betaing our Time to Talk program in Timnan and in Wellington, and we really want to expand it. We reached 1,200 students last year through that program with all the fits and starts of COVID. So this year, we're really, really excited about what we can do. If we start with our youth and they understand the tools that they need to choose healthy relationships, we will be so much farther ahead of the game. We hope to never see them at a later time. So that's very exciting. So that's a little bit about our programs. So that's how we served 3,557 people last year in Fort Collins. Next slide is a little bit about national statistics. And earlier I mentioned that domestic violence or intimate partner abuse is a pervasive issue. The statistics show, this is the NCED, that this is a national coalition against domestic violence. Statistics show that 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be affected by intimate partner abuse in their lifetimes. If we look at our communities, here we go. If we look at our communities, in Laramie County, 1 in 10 criminal cases are related to domestic violence. You may not know that domestic violence is actually not a charge. It's an enhancement. Typically, it's an enhancement on an assault charge. So what that means is a judge or a court of law will make determinations on a case of assault based on whether domestic violence was determined to be present or not, but it's not a specific charge in and of itself. 1 in 7 Colorado residents will become victims during their lifetimes. And regarding homelessness and in Laramie County, there are more people in shelter and more identifying substance abuse and mental health in our counties. And I know you've seen it. It is remarkable how many people that we have that are in situations of homelessness. I think if Crossroads does this work well, we can keep them off the streets. A disturbing trend for us is that 79% of our clientele in 2019 were, they earned between 0 and 30% of the AMI, the average median income in Fort Collins. Now that percentage is going up to 84, where we had people that stayed with us, maybe an average, we have an 8-week stay, maybe an average of 32 days. Now it's more like 15 days. So the cases are more complex, the homelessness is more prevalent, but we can make a difference. The things that actually are promising in all of this is that there are a lot more youth programs and there's a lot more resource for the homeless in our community. I can say that, you know, whether we have our grumpy days and perhaps our more critical days about the way that policy works in our city, we are exceptional at taking care of our citizens. So I'm on some as by virtue of being with Crossroads, I serve on the governing board of Colorado Continuum of Care, and we're doing a lot of homelessness. I think that the only challenge that we face is that we're all suffering in entities trying to roll in the same direction. And that can be, in and of itself challenging, but that's why the HUD-funded North Colorado Continuum of Care was developed in order to coalesce all of these resources so that we can really get at the hard problems of it. So there's a lot of promise there. One thing that I'll mention, and if you look at the statistics, 1 in 4, 1 in 7, it's shocking. That means you can go for a walk in the neighborhood, and there's likely circumstances that are tenuous in these households. So with that pervasiveness, the best thing that we can do is build awareness, take one step at a time and do our part, and ensure that shelters of domestic violence are supported, which First Presbyterian, I think the earliest records I show is that you started supporting Crossroads in 2013 with your generosity. And we are so grateful to you. You've been a consistent supporter of Crossroads, and you've made all the difference with our clients. And you've made a difference in what we can do to make Fort Collins even better than it is today. So one thing that you may consider is that Domestic Violence Awareness Month is coming up in October. So wear your purple, whatever purple that you've got on October 1st. And fly the flag for awareness building and for supporting victims. The more that we, again, start the dialogue, the better we will all be. So a little bit more, and then we'll open it up to questions. Successes and challenges. I think the fact that we never closed and we provided our services for free to our clients throughout the pandemic was a success. We were there, we never closed. And then we also identified another room that we've got set aside for lethality cases so that somebody in a situation where they have a lethality case comes to us and is never declined because we're full. Those rooms are always set aside. That's another success, if you will. I think as well, our programs are flourishing, where we have legal advocacy and domestic abuse response team, our DART team, our law enforcement relationships have become deeper and much more fruitful. And then they have their advocates on their side, we have them on our side, and they work fabulously together. So the more we work like that and discover these partnerships, the better we are as our clients. When I first came to Crossroads, actually July of 2020, so we were deep into matters uncertain. And but the other domestic violence groups reached out to me in Loveland, Greeley, Longmont, Estes Park, Sterling, Fort Morgan, and Greeley. And we formed a consortium. We formalized it with an MOU, and we will collaborate across our organizations to help all of Northern Colorado's victims as one team. And so that's very promising too. What's neat about that is our government grantors are looking at that and saying, gee, now we think we'll find a couple of navigators, which are folks that find resource for clients across many different services. And we're just going to, that just got funded, so we're just going to start doing that work too. It's exciting. I think as well, we have such a, the period of time we've been through, but let's say just 42 years of time, shall we say, has underscored our emphasis on prevention. And so we're looking at Time to Talk as a really successful program, especially with expansion into junior highs. It shows so much promise for a better world for our youth, while we also address the current needs of the folks that come to us. Challenges, we, like many other agencies, have just gone through a period of turnover, and that's been a little bit difficult. You know, it's kind of it's not sand, but it's kind of like really bad screen for all of us who do any plumbing. You're just taking one step back and it just edges back from the time we have really strong leadership and we're moving through it. What comes with that, though, is also opportunities to form and shape some things differently based on what we know and what we're learning. And so it's okay, but short-term pain for long-term gain, and that has characterized Crossroads. I'm hearing it from other agencies, EDs as well. Well, you were seeing it in all organizations, actually. It's an interesting time, but it's also a time full of opportunity. If I look to the future for Crossroads, our building, similar to part of your building, well, I understand you're celebrating your centennial, which congratulations on that. That's fantastic. Part of your building was built in 1959. Thank you so much, Glenn. And our building was built in 1959, and by Columbine Health Services, it was our first assisted living facility. So it's showing a little bit of wear. We just replaced the roof. Oh, that could be a dry winter, believe me. But we just replaced the roof, but it's showing its time. It's an extremely accommodating building, and it's amazing. It's an amazing resource, but it's a little tired. That's in our future. And it'll likely be at the same location. We'll see. Other initiatives is to really boost our outreach, as I mentioned, and prevention area. And then lastly is to really build capacity around the hotel program. Rehousing makes such a huge difference in the lives of our clients and the people that we serve. It is a game changer for their ability to choose a different life and to live without abuse. So what can First Presbyterian do? Well, the fact that you're listening to not just me, but many of the agencies in this is just stupendous. Compliments to all of you for being concerned and preparing as you do. It's amazing. So showing up really matters. It's fantastic. And being so willing to learn and then incorporating it into an educational series as you've done. That's pretty neat. Two other things that you can do is feel free to join us as a volunteer. Volunteers, and this is unsaid, I think, for a lot of agencies. We had 102 volunteers in 2019. And then it went down to 20 through the pandemic, and we're just building it back. So just being a part of our volunteer community is fantastic. We are hiring for that position, so bear with us, and be just a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit patient before we get you situated and ready to go. But whether you volunteer for a day or volunteer for years to come, however that works, it makes a huge difference for us. So that's another thing that First Presbyterian can do. We have non-direct service volunteers and direct service volunteers. No matter what, you'll have to go through 16 to 20 hours of training to be with us and to be around clients. We teach about trauma-informed care and some of the ways that you can be in the presence of clients and understand at a deeper level and where they are, and then to how to just navigate your way around Crossroads, whether you're in or outside of our organization as a volunteer at the same time. And then as well, your financial support has been amazing, and we thank you for that. There's not a time that we think that that is something that we're owed or that is a part of what you would choose to do, but we hope that we earn that trust from you, and we hope that you maintain the notions that you have around helping people as you do. So that is greatly appreciated too. So those three things. So I think I'm going to open it up to questions. Did I hit the?
Yep. You did. Oh yeah.
All right. Yes, nationally, they track certificate or permitting statistics on that for us. They're about 3 to 4% of all of our clients are veterans. And that's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid statistic for us, even during the pandemic. But yes, we do track it, and then we share it through various databases, but not with attribution around confidentiality and safety. Yeah, that's just the highest priority. But we will track some of the demographics so that we can get in front of the care that we provide. But yes, good question. Other questions? Do I have to call on you? Oh. Yes. You know, you can take many different routes with that. If you're disturbed, it doesn't hurt at all to have the police do a welfare check. So I would call the police, but you can also call Crossroads. We have a 24/7 crisis line, and you can request some advice, and we will be able to help with that. We have trained advocates on the phone 24/7 every day, and always. So that's who's going to call or probably answer our crisis line. We have had and often individuals who call and say, "I suspect that I have a friend who's in trouble. I don't know," and we'll walk through what's happening with you, and you can receive some more information on next steps there. They may just say call the police though because of the unknowns. Like, is there a weapon? Is it domestic violence or somebody who's hard of hearing? I mean, it can be a lot, but if it sounded intense and it made you this disturbed, yeah, I would definitely, yes, hard. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yeah, if you're feeling uncertain about it, but if your instincts tell you this is all over the top, call the police first. It's right. They also have a team of advocates out there too. Those are the folks that we partner with on the DART program, so they're wonderful. But I'm glad you brought it up because there are instances like these that it's a quandary. It's a quandary, you know. It's hard to determine what to do, but yeah, if it's left you feeling this disturbed, I'd call the police first, but you can call at any time Crossroads and say, what do you advise people to do in these instances, and we will help. Anything else? Yes, Dave. So for us, most of our clientele are between the ages of 18 and like your mid-30s. And then there's a little spot in there where there are not as many, and then there's quite a large number, similar to that younger number, between the ages of about 45 and 60, 65. So that's who we see the most often. Our cases are diverse. Domestic abuse does not discriminate. And we serve men, we serve people who identify as men, we serve just everyone. And in fact, we see many more diverse and underserved population at Crossroads than is representative of Fort Collins. You know? So age-wise, that's what we see. Men, maybe 5% clientele a year, those who identify as men. But you know, we've never had any issues with that in shelter. We've welcomed everyone. And again, our services are free of charge for everyone too. So there's no barrier, financial barrier to coming to us. But yeah, it's not been problematic. I think, thank you, Columbine, it's because of the size of our building. We're able to have so many more enjoy. This is too why we could make it through COVID as we did without closing, even though we had amazing staff shortages. It's because we can partition things off. We have rooms that have Jack and Jill bathrooms. We can close off one side. If we have a family we needed to isolate, we could put them in 2 rooms with a shared bathroom and make that work, particularly if we had perhaps a mom with 8 children, which we did have this last winter. Yeah, on the street. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Did that answer your question, Dave? That is a great question. Spiritual abuse typically comes in the form of restraining in that's the myriad of ways that we share in the types of abuse. Someone from meeting their spiritual selves and what they want in a relationship with God. Typically, that's a detraction from the coercion and control somebody wants to have over someone, because your faith may be your strength, and they don't want anyone being stronger. The abuser does not. So typically, it's a restraint of some sort. They cannot practice. They cannot be with their church community. If they're part of a church, they can't meet any of their spiritual needs with that person present. It is a more subversive sort of control, because you can put it in the side of emotional control, if you will, but it's not. It's much more than that. And it is, it's typically when, you know, the abuser knows that somebody is going to gain a foothold on their lives if they have that, so they take it away. What you can do about it, was that part of your question? Gosh, that's a toughie, because most of our cases are never reported. So these things are happening in households where it's harder to see it. I think in that instance, we need to do more to educate the community on what to do to how to handle domestic violence in general, because I think that the control that they have over another person is likely combined with other types of control, and that means that it's not like we can all be advocates. I'm not one, actually. I have a social work background, but I'm not an advocate. So I would actually ask that person maybe to reach out to Crossroads for our outreach program, and they can talk through their issue. That's kind of a little tenuous too, though, because you may reach out to them and say, you should do this, and they're like, what? There's nothing going on here. There's nothing going on here, because there's a lot of fear, or it's shame too, and concern related. But you could have them call us, and they can walk through their situation with us. Typically, like our Time to Talk program is not it can be close, but it's not. I'm going to express for Mike. It's similar in this way. We teach the peers to teach, teen dating violence prevention. But every time that there is one of those courses, we have an advocate present from Crossroads. If anybody is triggered or all of a sudden has a realization that maybe they're experiencing abuse in their home, we have a trained advocate there to talk through that circumstance. So the best thing I can do is see if they may talk to an expert about what's going on, so they can tease it out a little bit and then also understand what's happening. Sorry, a bit of a rambling answer to that one. But yes. We have group therapies, so we offer them on a group basis. We just started a collaborative relationship with CSU, and we do have therapists coming in now. But we didn't have that service always. It was mostly group therapies, and then we refer out, and we had plenty of people too. But now we have that advantage. And thank you, Laramie County Behavioral Health. That's how they just started this granting last year. And it's helped a lot of the agencies to address just one-on-one therapies that are needed, or even secondary trauma. There's actually a staff benefit that they provide because of the way that we wrote the grant and the way they accepted it. So that's a great question. I missed that earlier, so thank you for asking. Yes. It kind of goes hand in hand with stalking. When the clients that we see will have, the abuser will take over their phone and watch their messages. And then it'll give them a little bit more to make sure the person has no access to others, and it gives them more control. They will also have passwords for their computers and all sorts of ways. You see it a lot with our youth. So they're texting all the time, they're on Instagram all the time, and there's a lot of that that we deal with in Time to Talk. But typically they've taken some control over the device and they can watch everything they're doing. And it's easy. Just even geographically, we can tell where somebody is at any time. When we bring somebody in, we intake someone, we will ask them to work with their phone so that it's not a device that they can be tracked. Perpetrators have found our victims at the shelter through their phones, and sometimes they wait outside. We have to be very careful. We'll have security alerts. We have security 24/7 that goes around, checks on the shelter, and then police patrol too. But yeah, so technological abuse is typically using that access you have to the world, or the access that you have to all of your personal matters, and being able to see them, being privy to them, so that they can use that against their victims. So, yeah. Yeah. We have long thought about doing that, but we don't know how we can combine those missions. In fact, we've had instances where an abuser has come to us and said they were the victim, but yet we've housed their victim. So we keep really close track of all of those things so that we can check all the time, because it like human relationships is so complicated. So it's always complicated. So that being the case, it will likely not be a part of our mission, but we would partner for sure those that might work in that way toward the intervention. But it tends to be too hard to do in combination. All right.
We're doing great. There are, you brought some
I did.
materials to
Yeah.
tell people they can pick on their way up.
Yes, we have our year in review, which is, and I passed this out at the bell concert when I had spoken with you all. This beautiful bell concert, it was just singing and fabulous. Felt more like holidays than it had yet to be with you all. I have the year in review. We're about to do another one now. We completed an audit of financial statements. That's kind of like the catalyst behind freshening that